See, I knew it was going to.
Oh, got it.
All right, we're on live. So ladies, smile for the cameras because you guys are on a show. All right. Well, welcome everybody to the Ask the Experts. It is an awesome day, and I am so super excited about our topics today. And today's topic is really talking about support coordination. And for those, this is predominantly in New Jersey. So for my folks who are outside of New Jersey, you might tune in because some of the supports and services that we're going to talk about may be similar to what your state may offer. The support coordination services is really intended for individuals 21 and older. But as a parent that has a young man now who's 21, Nicholas, I just entered into this realm. Prior to that, I have been signed on for supports and services since Nicholas was the age of 3 with DDD. And DDD is the Division for Developmental Disabilities. And so for if you are new to autism diagnosis or other intellectual disabilities, when the child is 3 and gets diagnosis, the first step is to enter into early intervention. So you get early intervention supports and services through the state. And then then end up entering into the school system once the child is 3, between 3 and all the way to 21. So 3 to 21, you can have a combination of both education through the school district, and you can also have supports and services through the Division or Department of Children and Family Services, rather DCF. And then Department of Children and Family Services carves out the application process and the supports through a agency called Perform Care. So Perform Care is what New Jersey residents know for getting respite, camp services, those supports and services outside of the school district, right? So once the child gets to 21, all of a sudden the school district stuff goes away. Then parents now have to sort out and say, okay, depending on what the individual's needs are and the level of supports that they need, they will need additional supports. Now, obviously, as every parent out there listening to me, our vision in life is for our child to have the best life. We want them to work. We want them to have friends. We want them to go to be able to, if they're pursuing academics or go to college, we want that for everybody. The challenge is that not all individuals will be able to do those things. And the goal as a parent is identify what the needs may be and begin to work towards that. So if you remember about a year or two ago, we did a webinar on charting the life course. And charting the life course is bringing families together and saying, okay, sit down and think about what kind of life would you want your loved one to have? And what kind of life do you now want them to have? So that's very important because oftentimes we don't want to think that far in advance. We start to think, oh, I don't know what to expect. But unless you sit down and plan for what you want your child's life is, you may miss out on many, many resources and opportunities. So I may go in 2023. Oh my goodness, I can't believe 2023 will be here. I might revisit that topic because that's very, very important. And so one of the key things that it's important, it's the same way when your child is in school and they have a school counselor, or even a social worker who's a support person. So when they get into 21 and over, there is a whole support that they can get. And they have coordination of those supports. Now, I got to tell you, I wanted to do this topic and I brought in 2 amazing women who they might say, oh, they look up to me or don't listen to anything of that nature. I look up to them when it comes to this topic. And that's because they have invested in me and have given me advice and counsel. And when I started to think about the importance of sharing this topic, I had to go to them. And so I'm going to have them, introduce themselves. These are two women, amazing women who are CEOs of their own support coordination agencies. They've been in the system for a while now. They work with a number of families and individuals. And, I really told them, don't be shy about sharing the work that they do, because they're making an impact in the state of New Jersey. And I don't want to take that for granted, because sometimes we think we know someone and it's not a big deal. No, it is a bbig deal. So I'm going to be introducing Grace and Tosin Adeboyega. They're related, not by blood, but by family, married to two wonderful brothers, but two wonderful individuals, and they both have their own work that they do. So I'm going to open it up, and Grace, if you want to go first and introduce it, and then you can, I guess, sign it off to Tosin. So if you're watching us and you've joined us in the Zoom room, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here for this topic. If you have questions, they will guide our conversation and ask you to whether to dial in or text it in. But we really, really want you to feel free to ask them the questions that way. No question is silly, because the goal here is for you to get the best experience and the best information that you can. So on that note, I will open it up to Grace. And if you want to introduce yourself, and then Tosin, introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. G, for this opportunity. I'm really grateful. And yes, I do really, really look up to you. So, but thank you for this opportunity. So as said before, my name is Grace Adeboyega. I've been actually doing this now for quite a long time, probably about 25 years. I started actually working in DDD system when I was about 19. So it's been quite a long time. However, I got introduced into this great opportunity to just have my own agency and begin to actually pour out whatever it is that I've learned into individuals that are 21 years and above. So I think I have a bit of, knowledge to hopefully be able to answer some of the questions that you're going to have today. So it's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
All right. Hi. Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. G. It's been a long journey, right, Dr. G, bringing me on and just having me talk all the time. So pretty much my background is, so I'm the program head, CEO, whatever you want to call it, for Good Neighbor Support Services. I'm also the supervisor for it. And we've been in the practice for 6 years plus. But prior to that, I had the privilege of supporting individuals with developmental disability in New York for 7 years. I'd work alongside with case managers and actually in New York, it's called brokerage. And I've been able to work in home settings with them. I think that's a big part of what helps me know a lot about support coordination, given that I didn't go to school for support coordination or case management. My agency has 54 clients. We service Union County, Hudson County, Essex County, and Middlesex County for those that are in New Jersey here. I do have about 4 support coordinators, and I do have a manager who kind of works alongside with me in that process. All right, I think that's about it. All right.
Of course, I'm talking with my mouth moving and then I'm muted. So thank you so much for that introduction. So I'm going to have Grace start. I think that's the intent, right? So if you want to just give some housekeeping, if you want people to interrupt us, you're presenting, certainly do that. We also, if you're watching us on Facebook, you can post your questions that you may have for these wonderful ladies, and they will certainly answer it for you. And if you're online with us here, you can put in your question in the chat box, and we will take that as well. So on that note, I will start the slide deck.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Dr. G, very much. So myself and Tosin will be co-presenting today. So I'm going to just share a little bit of my opinion or knowledge on some of the slides, and then I'll bring her in. And per every of the slide, if you have any questions, kindly raise your hand up, and we'll be glad to actually answer those questions. So as we already know, presenting as support coordination, and we just want to kind of give you a brief knowledge about what it's all about. So today we're going to explain what support coordination is, where we'll identify how to access support coordination, and then discuss the responsibility of all the team members, talking about the family, the individual, the SC itself, the agency, and the role that DDD is going to play when you're trying to get into support coordination. We'll also highlight ways to assure quality of the services that will be rendered by the support coordination agency that you will choose, or if you decide not to choose, DDD sometimes will auto, allocate a support agency for you. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is support coordination? So support coordination is a service that is funded by DDD. And what do we mean by that? As been reiterated earlier by Dr. G, DDD is a division of developmental disabilities. So these are individuals ranging from the age of 3 to whenever it is that God calls them home. I'm talking about 100 if you have the ability to leave that long. So they will service you, but there are different ranges and categories in those sectors, which we'll get later on to, but we're just going to focus on support coordination, which deals with individuals that are 21 years and above. On the second dot here, it says it's available to individuals who are enrolled in the DDD support program, Medicaid-based fee-for-service. So what does this really mean? So in order to be able to get any program under the Division of Developmental Disability. And by the way, just putting this out there, I tend to talk really fast sometimes. So if I'm talking fast, please just kind of say slow down, Grace, okay? But I would try my possible best to kind of just not speak too fast. So for you to be able to get into this program, the first thing you must do that I would definitely encourage you to do is once your child turns about 18, because you're wanting them to get at the age of 21, you want to start, going to seminars, you want to start getting into different programs that will help you understand the processes, because the process can be a little bit tedious and it can be long. Sometimes, I've heard of people waiting to get approved for 2 years. So there are 4 steps that you must get engaged with to be able to even get the services. And I'm talking still under what is available to the individuals. The first step is you need to apply for Medicaid eligibility. So at the end of our presentation, if you would like those links, we can definitely forward it to you so you can get to know what you want to start reading up on that. So first steps for you to apply for the Medicaid eligibility. The second thing you want to do is to apply to the DDD eligibility. Once your child turns the age of 18, it's very, very essential that you you join the DDD community services. This will kind of enlighten you. The third step is you want to complete the NJ-CAT. It's called the NJ Comprehensive Assessment Tool. What that does is it's like a lot of questionnaires that you must answer. And I would definitely just plead with you to please answer it as honest as you can. I could understand me working with other individuals in the past, and we as parents sometimes want to view our children as, oh, he can do this, oh, he can do this. But the thing is, once you answer a question incorrectly, or you're trying to, give more power, even when that child doesn't really have that power, it can actually downgrade the funds that you might get, and the tier that they will place your child on might not be what is really needed. So I would definitely suggest that when you're doing that NJ Comprehensive Assessment Tool, that you be really, really honest. And then the first thing you're going to want to do is, once you've completed those 3 steps, which are the most important, is to now select an agency. Now, there are 2 ways in which that can be done. You can either fill up the application or just leave it to the DDD to auto enroll your child into the support coordinator. So to get in there, those are the main essential 4 steps that you must actually accomplish. So that's what support coordination is. But a third bullet point here, so it says individual must be a resident of the New Jersey. So I understand that there are some states also that do offer this, but as far as we are talking about today, we're just focusing only on New Jersey, and the individual has to be age 21. Something also that I forgot to say is, before your child turns to age 21, kindly ensure you start putting up this application. You don't want to wait the last minute. And they also have different dates to which when you would like to apply for this. So I think if you're born, within July to March, there's a certain time you must put in those applications as opposed to if you're born April to June. So those are information that you would like to also get knowledge about, so that you'll put it in the application in the right time, in the right season, so that your applications are not delayed. So once you get into the support coordination agency, what the support coordinator will do with you, because one will be assigned to every individual that will get into the support coordination. The support coordinator will actually do a care management plan for the individual. And whatever planned care that is done at that moment, the goal of it is to actually create something called ISP, and to create outcomes that will better enhance the live-in status of your child, and to just get them engaged in the community. So yeah, so I don't know, Tosin, do you have anything else that you'd like to add to coordination?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So just to kind of like weigh in on what Dr. G said and Grace, one thing we need to know, particularly with the Medicaid DDD eligibility, Dr. G was talking about the fact that when your child was much younger, before they enter into this organization called DDD, the things they got were entitlement. But in the world of DDD, the adults' life, it's eligibility. And that's what Grace is saying, that they have to be assessed on they use different evaluation process to come up with the decision that your child is eligible. And a part of that eligibility is the fact that, they lived in the state of New Jersey for 1 year. Did they acquire the disability before the age of 18? Or were they born with it? So the person may not be born with it, but they must acquire that disability that is impacting function before the age of 18 in order to be able to fit into the eligibility criteria. And when Grace was talking about the fact that when you complete the NJCAT assessment, typically somebody calls you or they have you fill out a paperwork. It's a different ways they can do this. In more recent times, it's a phone call or even a virtual, like a virtual interaction where they send you a link and then everybody shows up, the caregiver and also the individual. One thing to know is you always have to think in your mind. There's different components to the NJCAT. You have the self-care component, you have the behavior, you have the medical component. Dr. G, help me out if I'm forgetting one thing. But there's a lot of different criteria to come up with what budget your child will be eligible for. Something to mention, and I'm going to do this quickly, is to know that when a child is born with a disability that impacts function or acquires it, that you automatically have this kind of support money in the system. It comes out of taxpayers, and the taxes all of us pay. A certain percentage is put towards providing support for individuals with disability. So when the child has that, it's in the system. It's a matter of access, how you access that budget. And that's where the support coordinator comes in. One other thing to note is the fact that in this present model of support coordination, it's a service in the DDD model of self-directed care. So when it says self-directed care, they're talking about the fact that they want the individual to determine, and their caregiver to determine how they want to move forward with their life. It cannot be something that is finger pointed by the provider or that the support coordinator tops over it. It has to be something that the individual desires to do or their caregiver see their child or loved one being. So it has to be, it's client-centered. I think that's the word I was looking for. A client-centered approach. However, that process is supported by the coordinator. And 4 things that coordinators do, and Grace said it already. Number 1, they help them access the budget. They help facilitate the process of identifying the supports. And it doesn't have to just be supports that comes out of the budget. It could be something in the community that does not require the budget itself, and also to help modify the plan. Grace was talking about the ISP. That is the support coordinator is the author of the ISP. They develop it from listening to the client's story and understanding their needs. And then when it has to be modified, the support coordinator also is responsible for modifying those things. I think that's about the only thing I wanted to touch upon.
All right, so before you guys
Tosin,
go,
we have a few questions here, if you don't mind answering a few questions.
Sure.
Jenna, before you go, let me just add something that Tosin said, and I think is very important. She said eligibility versus entitlement. We are entitled to schooling, therefore it's something you're going to get. With DDD, it's something that you have to apply for, and there's two components that she mentioned. You have to apply itself to the DDD process. Once you are approved, the next step is then they're going to make you do the NJCAT. So the NJCAT is the New Jersey Comprehensive Assessment Tool. And to her point, there is a more detail, because when you first apply to DDD, you're saying, my child has special needs. I'm applying for the service. They're going to require you to prove that your child needs this. They're going to require all the paperwork from your doctor's office that proves that, all these assessments. So parents out there, listen to me. All the documents that you have over the years, store all of that, because you're going to need it when you're applying. And then they're going to do the NJCAT. So once the NJCAT is, once you're approved by DDD, they do the NJCAT, and then they assess the level of support you're going to need. That's really what they were referring to. So before you guys get into the whole case management part, I wanted to bring that back again so parents can understand what they're applying for. They are applying first, you get approved, then you do the NJCAT, somebody calls you and they ask you a bunch of questions, again, to assess the level of support. But in order for you to apply, there's a whole bunch of paperwork.
Yeah.
And that part of it is where it can be a little bit overwhelming. So hopefully that clarifies this question for a bunch of people. And Grace mentioned the timing. I did it when he was 19, applying to DDD when he was 19. And it took up to the age of 20 and a half to get through the process. So that by the time he was 21, I was good to go. So to her point, you can apply, but you can't get the services until he's 21. Two different steps.
Yeah.
Application to get in, and it's then waiting. So it's almost like if your child is going to college, you apply now, but they can't start until the following fall.
Yeah.
So the start of service is 21. Application is before that, but give yourself enough time to get in there. Just wanted to add that, then Jenna, go ahead and ask the question.
Okay, one of our questions was actually about how soon they should complete the NJCAT. And I think you kind of answered that right now. So would you say around the age of 19?
So you can apply for, you can't do NJCAT unless they invite you to complete it. So that's the point. The first step is apply to DDD first. Then the next section of it is then they will call you to, I just walked the journey just recently, and they literally submitted, they sent me a link, but then I had to do it with somebody who had to confirm it. And then based on how I responded, they determined that his needs is so severe that they called again. Then I had two people on there to confirm the information. But thankfully, because I was already in the system, they have information from prior to 21 to collaborate what I had. And then what really helped me was I took my child's IEP document, because every 3 years the school is required, but a lot of time parents waive this. They're required to do an assessment. So I just completed an assessment when he was 19. I took that assessment, which included the language, which included psychosocial, all that information and all those assessments. I sent that paperwork into DDD. So then the more information you have, the more clear it shows the need for support. So that's really what I want to kind of highlight to that point.
Perfect. I also have someone asking for links. Do we have a certain link to apply for DDD?
All right, so we will definitely post the links in there while they're presenting. So we'll put that in there for you.
Before you move on from this slide, I wanted to say something about the level of support. It is very important that the parents be aware of whoever is reporting, that will be reporting to DDD, to make sure that when they report the level of support, that they picture that individual as not having any help. Like, what does your child look like not having the support they have right now from you? So let's say your child can feed themselves independently, but if you're not in the home, let's say you step out of the context of the living room, can the child still do it? If the child cannot do it, then you have to describe that child based on the level of support needed. because otherwise you will be describing your child on the support you're giving as opposed to the support that they actually really need.
Yes, and that's very, very important because we have to do a reassessment many of times with some of the individuals, because during the assessment, the individuals were answering to what they were doing as opposed to what the child can actually do. So it's very, very important that you answer based on what the child can actually do as opposed to what you're doing for the child. So yeah, I think that's a good point. So Dr. G, before we go to the next two slides, I think, can you go 3 slides up before we go into what's expected of family responsibility? Okay, yes. All right. So here I'm just going to kind of quickly just reiterate why choose support coordination services. I mean, as highlighted here, you want to choose it because it's required to access the DDD budget based on the tier that your child will be put on after the comprehensive assessment tool. It will also strengthen the individual's self-awareness in the community because there are different perspectives and different options that a support coordinator can work with the guardian or the individual to getting them into the community, to getting them engaged in the things that are needed for their growth. Engages the individual via the community, as I've stated, and then ensures individual needs are met at an individual level. So it's literally based on what the individual, if the individual is able to speak and to really talk to the support coordinator as to what they need on day-to-day perspective, the outcome that will develop for that individual will be geared towards their process. However, if the individual has some kind of speech impediment, then at that moment, there's a guardian that is actually assigned for the individual that can actually be the mouthpiece for the individual. And then, talk based off of that so that we can actually get a clear, good outcome for the individual. This will help the stability and the self-awareness, will engage them in different things that they can potentially be engaged in within the community that they reside in. So yes, this is why, some of the reasons why you must choose support coordination. Tosin?
Oh, well, before
Yeah,
you
I think
go,
you said it all. I think you kind of said it.
can I ask a question about, can you clarify the word budget? Is it some money that parents can spend? It comes to them? Explain, because this is one of those hot questions that parents, no matter how long you've been in the system, there's a big thing about budget. What is the budget mean?
Okay, so budget literally just means budget. So, but it's not in the term where with the guardian can just go and lavish it on God knows what. The budget is literally for the services that can be offered to that individual. So let's say, for example, you have a child that is on tier 1, behavior maybe is also 1, medical is also 1, and you're like on a budget of 30,000 because that's just a tier 1. It's not so much of a crazy high skill level. It's still in the low. So the budget might be maybe 25,000 to 32. And based on what you're telling the support coordinator, we highlight that, okay, based on everything you've stated right now, we're going to need to get this individual into speech therapy, maybe because they wish to just speak better. So out of that 25 to 30,000 that the DDD has allocated the individual, will get a service that can care for that speech therapy, or maybe they need to be in a rehab or whatnot, so all the budget has to be within the money that's been allocated for that individual. So it's not something for the parent to squander away or, yeah. So okay. I don't think you can.
All right, so let me add to that, because I think one person who's been in this program, Ronke, I'll put you out there for those of us who do partners in policymaking. One of the key things to note here is that this money that is being spent to support our individuals comes from Medicaid dollars. So the average person thinks Medicaid is only for health insurance, but the Medicaid dollars is what's paying for that speech therapist at the age of 21 and above, or the behavioral therapy, or the individual supports person, that their time that they're spending to be with your loved one, or even the camp, respite, all those services comes from Medicaid dollars. And the Medicaid dollars comes from when you apply for SSI. So that's why when the child turns 18, one has to apply for SSI, and it automatically comes with the Medicaid, and it comes with healthcare, and it also then pays for supports for the individual. So the budget component that you're talking about is all paid by Medicaid dollars. So I just wanted, so this is the reason why for those of us in the disability circles, it's important to understand the importance of maintaining Medicaid, because Medicaid is not just for the healthcare, but it then allows the individual to have a place if they ended up needing residential housing. That's also part of the Medicaid dollars. You mentioned tiers, just only because I'm walking this journey literally right now. So the tiers goes from A to F.
Yeah.
And then, so what Grace said is that the lower the tier, or the lower the letter A, the lower the dollar amount. The higher the letter, all the way to E and F, the bigger the budget. That means the individual needs more help, if that's the best way to do it. I just want to just break it down. Tosin knows my style. I break it down so that families don't feel like I'm confused, because otherwise we leave you like, you said something, you said tier. So if you're listening to me, write down the word tier, T-I-E-R. That's what that means. And it's correlated to the how much money your individual will get from the Medicaid dollars. So I'll pause there. I think that hopefully clarifies it. But I throw that in because people, that's an area that people have a lot of questions about.
Okay. Do you have any questions in the audience, or can we move along?
I think you can move on. Which
Okay.
way do you want me to go?
Yeah. So if we could go back to what's expected of the family.
Okay, good.
Okay. Yes. So family's responsibility. So here, judging from the different experiences that we've had, it is very, 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 very important. I would definitely say, because at times, you know, we supervisors, we assign support coordinator based on the location of the individual, based on what we know the individuals can do. However, sometimes the support coordinator can work with the family, and the family is not really engaged with that person. So this is why it's very, very important. Instead of you switching from agency to agency, have your support coordinator, supervisor information. That way you can always call to say, can I kindly change my support coordinator? It's always in your best interest anyway, as opposed to be going to different support coordination, and then you get placed into another support coordination agency and you want to change support coordination. So support coordinator. So I will definitely say, always request your supervisor's, your support coordinator, supervisor's phone number, just in case you have other questions that he or she cannot answer. The supervisor is always there to enlighten you and to give you more knowledge as to what you need. I would definitely say that once you get assigned a support coordinator, once you're in an agency, definitely set an expectation. You do not want to just have a support coordinator that is just there, just asking questions about the child, and there's no expectation between you two. So I think a family doing that also gives a bigger and a nice picture that, okay, this individual really cares about their child. So you set it an expectation, set a goal, however it is that you two want to work together to meet and to get your child to the better place that they can be. Ask as much questions regarding the resources that are available for that child and work on from that. Give detailed information about the individual during an annual. As I stated early, given a detailed information during the comprehensive assessment tool is important, as also doing an annual. So what is an annual? So let's say you get an individual, or you get into a support coordination agency, and the supervisor assigns you a support coordinator that will be working with you. What they do is call you, and what you have to know is that within every month of the year, this support coordinator must speak with you in regards to your child. So there's something we call MMT, which are done on a regular monthly basis, and a quarterly, which is like a facial, like you speak to the individual, you see their surroundings, you know what is going on in the person's home, and you're detailing it. Now, as the months progresses to 12 months, it's called an annual. So doing an annual is something called NGISP, and there's PCPT. So the NGISP really, really focuses on the behavior, the safety aspect, the contact, the emergency, if the individuals would like to be employed, focus on the outcome and different stuff. And then the PCPT actually focuses in detail the people that are in the individual's life, the quality of support worker that the individual will want, what are their ideas to do, what are their hopes and dreams, what are their strengths and their weaknesses, would they like to go into education, so these things are very detailed. So it's really, really important when a support coordinator sits with you to ask you all this question. I know sometimes it can be tedious. However, it's for the benefit of the child. So you want to ensure that you answer those things in detail, especially the PCPT. When you get those answered in detail, there's always a great outcome that will be specialized for that child to just help them grow. And then the last thing I would say here is get all the required documents signed on time. So let's say a case is assigned to an agency. That case needs to be approved within 30 days. So it's a really short time to get all this information, especially if an individual already has a provider that they're working with. You have to know now that the support coordinator that is assigned to this individual must call all the providers. Let's say this individual, before getting into DDD at the age of 21, was working with the coach or was working with the provider therapy or respite, or whatever it is that they're working with. So support coordinator person has to get all this detail, get in contact with these people just to ensure that everything that she's asked you is also aligning with what they have, right? And put those providers onto the services to create an outcome. So it is very, very essential that if a SC is sending information to you, please help me sign this, please do this, that you do it on time, because those cases have to approve within 30 days. Tosi, I'm going to leave the floor to you at this moment.
Yeah, I think you said it all. One thing that the individual and the family really have to know is that you're self-directing. You are the one hiring your support. Even in situations where you were auto-assigned to an agency, the minute you come into that agency, you have the right, and I think when the support coordinator comes along, they come with that rights and responsibility, because DDD has its own list of things they want you to know, that as an individual, as a family, these are the expectations. Like she said, you need to pick up your call at least once a month to speak to your support coordinator, which is kind of like a challenge with some families, that they don't pick up the calls, they don't see the relevance of picking up the call. But when you're in this DDD self-directed model, fee for service, you are the driver. You're driving your own care. You hire your own support. I do know, like, my agency and some other agencies, you get to interview your support coordinator. Like when the state assigns the client, I've been the support coordinator supervisor. I make the call out. I introduce myself after reading the plan, because it gives me like a snapshot of what the family is and this need for support. Then I say to them, I identify the support coordinators in my agency that might be able to support the person better. And then I say to the family and the individual, do you want to interview the staff? And so very, very crucial, you're self-directing, you hire your own support, and you work alongside your support coordinator to identify your needed resources. So you are in control. I think that's what I would like to add now.
All right, so let me just add to it from the family perspective. So I'm like walking that journey. So to break it down to everybody, the support coordination service is a form of case management.
Yeah.
It is, you are assigned to a company, or you pick a company that will link you between DDD and supports, and which means providers. So provider for transportation, provider for housing, provider for community-based supports, providing for vocational related stuff. So I just want to just kind of break it down so people understand what we're referring to here. Is a case manager assigned by DDD, in a sense, to work with you as a family to get to the type of supports your loved one may need. For some of us, at the age of 21, the individual is no longer going to school, so they need to get to work. They need employment supports. This is what the support coordinator's job is, to link you up to the support. So I just want to make sure that people understand what this means, right? It's unlike school, where you're no longer going to school, but this is what it is. Sometimes at the age of 18, when the individual can graduate, There's a little lag time. So I want to also throw that in here right now. If they decided they want to go off to college and they're no longer, but they're not eligible for DDD until 21. So I just want to make that clear. If they get to 21, and at that point they're in college, they still could be eligible for DDD services. So we just want to add that part in, and your support coordinator is with you for that process. And that's really, really important to kind of make that notation, because oftentimes a lot of families are not sure that they can kind of do that. I have a question here that says, is the support coordination service same model as Perform Care support service? In a way it is. If you have Perform Care and you're blessed or you were able to press through, you can get, if I use the word press through, meaning that you can be assigned a support person who is supposed to be able to help you navigate. But most families don't have a direct specific person assigned to them under Perform Care. But a nice thing in the DDD world, you are assigned. Or auto-assigned, or you get to pick your support coordinator. So that's the differences there. For a number of the families that are joining us are not familiar with the DDD side. So that's why I want to just make sure that I clarify that for them. All right, so want to go to the next slide or any other questions? Okay.
Okay, so what are the responsibilities for the support coordinator that is assigned to you? One of the responsibility definitely, obviously, is to call, introduce themselves to you, get you got it. If possible, I say to all the staff, get a feel and let them want to know you, talk to them about you, especially the guardian, or if the individual in itself is the guardian, you want to get to know them over the phone before you start getting to business, because you want an atmosphere that is really, really clear. So one of the responsibility is just to make the environment very accessible, easy to understand, very supportive, and definitely getting to the work is for you to provide case management of all the services, develop programs and resources that will support the wellness of that individual and the resident they live in. Some of them are living with the parents, some of them are living by themselves, some of them are living in group home. So you want to ensure that you have a rapport with the people that you're going to encounter with the individuals, so that it can be a very smooth transition in getting everything that is needed. And also, as we stated earlier, to conduct a monthly health and safety monitoring, which is called the MMT, just to ensure that everything is going well, and to also give that support coordinator more information that might have been bypassed before the following month MMT. So let's say maybe the month of January 15, the support coordinator met with you to ask you a series of questions just to ensure everything is going on. However, after the 15, on the 16th, 17th, something happened. You didn't speak to the support coordinator, but then the support coordinator comes in February 15 to ask you more information. So those details that transpire before or between those 2 days is really essential that you also give that the support coordinator those information. And I also grill that some of the support coordinators should also be asking those questions, because at times you have overload of different things as a family, because it's not easy having someone that is disabled in the family. So it's very essential that that support coordinator really, really understands that and gets to the basis of any issue. The floor is yours, please.
Yeah, so I think one thing to add to this when it comes to the responsibility of the support coordinator is that the family, because a lot of times the family are in conflict with the support coordinator, not understanding why I'm trying to reach my support coordinator, why is she not picking up or picking up. I try to explain to them that based on mandate, the state mandates the support coordinator to contact once a month for health and monitoring. However, they can do other follow-up things with you. What families, I would want them to know is the fact that the support coordination agency is accessible to you 24/7. I remember 6 years ago when we went to Trenton to listen to the presentation about the whole self-directed model. One of the things that the state did express to us was the fact that they did not want individuals and their families to become numbers, with the whole model whereby the budget was housed in an organization. And when families needed some kind of support or access to things, the minute you're not able to reach your support network or team, after 5, you would have to wait till the next day, or if it's a weekend, you have to wait till Monday. Families should be aware that your support coordinator is mandated to contact you once a month, make a home visit every 3 months. However, in crisis or the need to communicate or access some kind of need, you can always reach out to the support coordination agency. The state requires that we have a on-call line to be able to be reachable. But not your support coordinator. I would say if you're in crisis and you need to reach someone, you should be calling the support coordination agency, and they have someone for you.
Okay, so Tosin, you taking this or should I take it?
Oh, so this is me. Okay. So one of the things that was said earlier was the fact that the role of a support coordinator is to access the budget, is to help the individual who is in a self-directed model, meaning that you're driving your own services, you're employing your home service provider with the support. Sometimes the individuals are able to do it independently, and in situations where they're not able to do it independently, the support coordinator will provide the needed support. And the reason why I weigh in on the word needed support is the fact that we cannot choose providers for you. Families, individuals, we cannot choose providers for you. It's a conflict of interest. What that means is I could have my sister start a direct care agency, I don't know, in Newark, and then have my client, my individuals who are in support coordination saying, oh, I need somebody to come to my house to take me to the library. In a situation where you're pointing individuals to service or service providers, I could be pointing my client to my sister who has a service in Newark. That is why the division says you cannot handpick a provider. So as individuals and caregivers in the self-directed model, you are driving your own care and you are requesting for the needed support. And what that means with support coordination is all of these services that you see here, whether it's assisted tech, behavioral services, career planning, whatever it is, you are working alongside with your support coordinator to identify. They can choose for you. You can ask them that, I live in this town. Is there any way you can do the research for me? Otherwise, your support coordinator should be giving you the DDD link. There's a link of service providers. I'm going to be honest with you. It is not the most friendly link in terms of user friendly. It's not. But you can always ask your support coordinator if you feel like you're struggling with it as a family, especially the older generation where the parents are not able to use technology. The support coordinator can, bring their computer on site or whatever way they want to adapt this to support you to identify caregivers in your community. And a big part of this whole service thing is the fact that DDD anticipate that support coordinators or support coordination agencies or providers or service providers that knows the environment or the community, and if they don't know it, that they have that ability to research. That's really where the strength of a support coordination agency lies, being able to connect those services and make those things possible. I'm not sure if anybody has a question about any of the services here, but if I just want to quickly go off this, I want to talk about the community inclusion services. Those are services in the community that allows our clients to be integrated into not necessarily the immediate environment. It could be the next town, but something that it's inclusive and not so segregated or isolates them. So a good example, if there's a service in the community and it's just for people that have no disability, like DDD will not necessarily embrace that. So it has to be a service that is all inclusive and will promote a function, I guess. But if you have any question on this service, a lot of them, it's a lot of detailing. The PARS is more of a security response. If you have an individual who you want to make sure that they're safe in the community, maybe they live alone. And in case of, I don't know, if they have a heart condition or they are prone to falls, so they can't live alone. However, in case of emergency, they need to have a way of reaching people or somebody reaching them. The PERS service is available for that. There is a service that's not listed. I think it's in the next slide. It's called Goods and Services. I think I want to talk about that. If you can go to the next, I'm not sure if it's
that's good.
That's it. Okay, well, I'll talk about it. It's called goods and services. So goods and services is that service that DDD identified as. So in people with individuals with disabilities and their caregivers typically don't have access to certain things that, typical, like the regular people has access to. And certain services do not exist in DDD world, meaning that they don't provide those kind of. I'll get a good example. Let's say an individual has a home that is not so clean, not tidy, and service providers are not able to come into those settings because they're kind of like grossed out about them not keeping the house tidy. So now you have an individual who is struggling to keep caregivers, meaning that providers come, but then they just say, we're not coming again. And then you realize that if you can provide if you can get a cleaning service into the house, then service providers will stay. Well, we don't have that service in DDD. So what's possible is if you can identify someone in the community who does this already, meaning has a business, or a housekeeping business, you can use DDD system, there's the paperwork to complete, to be able to get the individual to get that service, and it will come out of the budget. There's a system to that. I just wanted to say that because it's a really a great opportunity if you're seeing something for your loved one that you're like, I really wish, my child or family member can't access a music program in the community, but the person is not a provider. You can use goods and services to access that kind of service. I think that's
So
it.
what I'm hearing you say is that these are services that the person's budget can help fund.
Yes,
So if the individual needs interpreter services, for example,
yes.
DDD will pay for it.
Yes,
Needs
it's in the iRecord, the system where the budget is housed. Interpreter services is part of that.
So interpreter service, transportation, vehicle modification, so that the individual needs their vehicle to be modified, this can be paid for. Occupational
Yes.
therapy. So these are things that parents naturally usually will pay for on their own when the children are young, but now they're getting older, they're 30 years old, they're in the part of the adult support services, they can get this all covered.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So choosing a support coordination agency, I think we talked about that. Sometimes the state auto assigns this, or the family member, maybe from, being part of a support network, or, people from the community or the day program, or, we're talking about people that are just entering the DDD system, just from your just natural network of people. If you know of an agency that is well talked about, you can actually pick that agency on your own. Or if you're not sure, DDD will auto assign you to an agency. But typically, there's a form to fill out when you come into DDD. There is a form to fill out to choose support coordination agencies. I think one thing so that's okay. I think one thing to mention is that when you choose a support coordination agency, one of the things you want to know is the job turnover rate, meaning how well does the agency keep its staff? Because sometimes, with families that already, they have their own things already stressed out. And then every time they blink, it's a new service provider, which is not unusual. In support coordination, you're going to find out that there's a lot of job turnover, and that's just case management in general. But one of the things you want to ask whether the support coordinator supervisor or, when you're assigned to the agency, is to ask and say, how often, how long have you had your staff for? Or how long have you guys been around? And just, I say, think of hiring when you're hiring someone, the typical questions you would ask the agency head, those kind of things. Pretty much that's it.
All right, so there was a question
We
in the
have
chat.
a,
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
There was a question in the chat box about what is a day habilitation, and then also we want to just mention that we put in the Zoom chat the how to apply for DDD. So the question is, what is day habilitation?
So a day habilitation is it's more like it's a program, but typically people view it as a school where people go to learn different skill set. In the past, day was more very traditional, where you go from Monday through Friday or 5 days a week. But in the new self-directed model, day program has become something that you can actually customize to your loved one's needs, meaning that if you want your individual to go in for just 2 days, they can go in there. But typically what happens in the day habilitation is there are all kinds of programs built in, whether it's towards employment, whether it's towards recreation, or just, forming a network of friends to learn social skills. There's so many things built into a day program for the client, but the whole goal is to foster interaction and learn skills needed for whatever goals they have. One thing to also mention when it comes to day habilitation is, just as family, to be careful, even though the traditional model of Monday through Friday is not very prevalent anymore, as a business owner, like whoever owns the day hub or day program, they're in it. Of course, they care about people with disability, but the honest truth is they're there to make money. So when somebody comes and says they have like a support coordinator sends out an inquiry email saying that, my individual, a snapshot of their individual stating that they're looking for services to attend the day program service. If you put in that your individual will only come in for 2 days, and then there's another support coordinator who is reaching out to the provider for a 5-day, and there's only one seat available, the chances of them picking a 5 days higher because they want consistency. But I think that's something to note and to be aware of. Not to say that you would want your individual or your loved one in a day program that does not meet their need. Maybe they don't need to be there for 5 days. It just means that be aware and just empowered. You don't have to have your loved one in a day program for 5 days if they cannot tolerate it.
Oh, yeah. And also one thing that I was going to add to that was a lot of times when parents get involved with the support coordinator, and the support coordinator actually asks, okay, is your child working? If not, would like to put them in some type of volunteer activity, because for you to be still qualified, it is very essential that when the support coordinator is making an outcome, that there's also an employment outcome. So now you can ask me, okay, what if I have a disabled child that cannot do anything, that needs 24-hour support? So now that's something different, that a different form can be filled out. But if you have a child that is still able to walk, maneuver, needs assistance, but can do 2 hours, 3 hours, DDD does specify that this individual should get a job. So something such as day habilitation can actually help them to kind of get them to know what type of skills they like. Maybe they like arts and craft, maybe they just like doing movies, or they like packaging stuff. Those are things that day habilitation can help the individual to realize, so that when the support coordinator does ask for some type of, is trying to build some type of outcome for employment, this is something that he or she can potentially put there to have this individual also getting paid. But they don't want that, to have a volunteer in a library or such stuff. So I don't want to just come at you as, what do you mean employment work? But it's also part of what DDD expects for every individual to do in New Jersey.
Thank you for bringing that up, Grace. Yeah. So we run into this all the time when the support coordinator is developing the ISP, which is the individual service plan. The state requires an employment outcome, but it is very important that family be aware. When an employment outcome is required, it does not mean that the individual will work. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that they will get a job. It just means that they will make attempts to acquire skills needed to be employable. Mm-hmm. So skills like being able to tolerate sitting in a particular setting, skills such as being able to make an exchange of, items, or not have an outburst given a certain environmental set. It's really more of a life skill, as opposed to when you come into DDD, we are prepping you to get a job. It's working on skills needed to be employable, not to be employed. So it just,
I just want to add that the goal for every person in life is to have be a productive member of society. That means we're contributing to the workforce in some way. And some workforces is on a paid basis and some are not paid.
yeah.
Just because the individual needs support doesn't mean that they cannot do something that cannot contribute
Yeah.
to society. And that's what DDD wants to. So we called it, we are part of Employment First State. That means that the goals in developing what they call ISP. So they're using the word ISP. Most families know it as an IEP, if the child is in school. And that's the similar concept here, right? If you're looking at your IEP, you usually have goals and objectives in there, where you're looking at NJISP, which is the service plan that needs to be approved by the state for services to be rendered. One of it should be a goal that this person develops skills to work in an environment. Now, it could be anything they can. Some people just want to just do art work. They want to work in an art museum. So who knows, they paint. That might be part of the skill set development to bring them into a place where they can work. So that's part of the goal. And as family member listening in, it's important that we have that mindset that we want our loved one to also contribute to society, and which is really the essence here. We're not promoting people not to work and just receive free money. No, we just want to make sure they have the right and supports to ensure that they're a productive member of society, which is the reason why we all send our kids to school, right? We want them to develop a vocation. We want them to develop academics that will allow them to work. And for some people, it may be a trade school. So that's the concept here. And I think I'm glad that you brought it up. You use the word outcome. That's a big word for families. And what she's really intending is that what would be the goal for this person in terms of getting the type of support that they want? Maybe I want to learn how to crochet. So part of my outcome will be to be able to connect to resources that will enable me to learn how to crochet. That will be part of my outcome. And then on a yearly basis, at least there should be a track on that. But I throw that in there because we use a lot of acronyms and big words here, and we don't always know what that is. All right, so I think the next one is requirement to be a support coordinator.
Sorry,
That's okay.
my battery. All right, sorry for that. So pretty much requirements to be a support coordinator is to have a degree, of course, in sorry about that. To have a degree in any subject, a bachelor's degree in any subject. However, the state does require that you have a 1-year experience working with people with disability prior to being employed as a support coordinator. You definitely have to have a fingerprinting or criminal background check, and also have some kind of transportation, because it does involve going for home visits and things like that. One of the things that I would always say to my support coordinators is the fact that a lot of support coordination job is opportunity is a virtual. It's more like a virtual office. You don't have like a set place that you go. Some agencies has that, but for the majority, we don't have that. So you pretty much have to know that you have a computer, a phone. Since it's not a lot of in-person things, you have to do a lot of things on your computer. But that is the state requirement when it comes to support coordination. What's that on me? I'm going to take the camera out one more time, please. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. Okay. Back in. Okay. So disenrollment from the agency. So like we said, support coordination agency, when you come into support coordination, you're self-directing. You have the right to, I don't want to say the word fire, but it is what it is. If you do not want to work with a particular agency anymore, you have the right to do that. If a support coordinator does not best meet your support needs, you can make those changes. So one of the things we see is, the family is frustrated, expressing that, things are not going their way. And a lot of times when they reach out to the state the state really says, you can change your provider, that. So I think it's very important for families to be aware that they can't always change their providers if they cannot reach an agreement on what's going on, and to be able to have some kind of dialogue on the issues that's pressing. Okay. All right, so assuring quality services. So, for my agency, and I'm sure for some other agencies, is the fact that we have like weekly check-ins. I know when I bring on my support coordinators, we typically will have like orientation, just to kind of tell them, number one, I will share with them how I came about the opportunity. And a lot of times folks that come to support coordination, they're just looking for an extra income. But the honest truth is, what keeps us in the practice is not the money. I think Grace will agree to that. Yes, we came in for a little change, and then as we got to know the family and see what we bring to them in terms of quality and in terms of just being a part of their lives and meaning, and just the smile. I know I have, like very, very vivid stories of families that were just genuinely grateful for being a part of their life. It is not the money that keeps us in. It is the smile and how we see the clients move forward. So in my agency, I know we use the weekly, like when I take on a new support coordinator, I'm very much closely monitoring them, asking them to check in with me or check in with them. I would make like a checklist of things. And then on monthly basis, like Grace said, we have to do a monthly monitoring. But the way we assure quality in Good Neighbor is to make sure that the issues that were coming from the previous month are being carried over to the new month. And the state is also looking for that, because oftentimes issues get dropped. So maybe somebody said they went to the cardiologist. We want to make sure the following month we follow up on what was the conversation, what was the follow-up. The home visit log, I put that there, is when the individuals go home to visit the family, meaning the support coordinator goes home to visit the families and the individuals, that the family signs the home visit log, just as a proof that the support coordinator was there. Performance evaluation, that is something that we use in Good Neighbor. After 3 months of being with the agency, I get to evaluate the client, and I do send like a Google thing to the family to kind of give me a feedback of what, how things are going. We also have like protocols. DD has its own, but in Good Neighbor, we also have like in-house protocols. For example, if you're trying to reach a client and they're not reachable, to be able to what do we do the first week? Second week of making an attempt, what do we do? Third week, what do we do? Because when the state comes, if we have a concern of not being able to reach a client, they want to know, what have we done? Have we turned every stone possible to reach the client? So we do have that, and surveys are something that's available, in my agency, whereby we're able to kind of like check to see if we're doing what DDD wants us to be doing, and are we meeting the client's expectation. So that's how we assure quality, at least with Good Neighbor. I'm sure Grace will want to say something to that effect.
Yeah, similarly, Care Support Services does the same thing, just ensuring that everything is being followed. Every agency must have their own policies and procedure manual, just to ensure that everything is being followed appropriately according to DDD guidelines. And I think one thing that we've not mentioned is, for every agency, they do have a 24/7 on-call phone number that any of the individuals can reach out to should there be any kind of emergency that they need help with. So if you do get into a support coordination agency, I think those are one number that you should ask, just to have on handy in case of an emergency. What number should I be contacting your agency on? So yes, thank you.
We have a question here that came in. The question is, in normal circumstances, how long it takes to change your support coordination agency?
I think it's less than a week. Like literally, it depends on the individual. If you fill the form today, send it to DDD the next day. They change it for you. So I think it's up. It depends on that individual. I mean, or on the guardian of the person, or maybe if the person is even in a facility. It depends on how long the application is sent, because the application can be done online. So they respond to you within 24 hours. So it doesn't take that long.
So you can make the change anytime. However, I think with the transmittal and all that stuff, it might not show up until the first of the next month. I'm not sure if there are other cases where they can expedite the process if it's like, I don't know, but oftentimes, like I know that when clients request our agency, they don't show up until the following month, like the first week of the following month. So
Yeah, so I think it would depend.
yeah.
Then one mode of asking for your agency to be the agency to be changed. Yeah.
So managing conflicts, conflicts always occurs because it's all part of the learning process and it's part of life. The first thing that is setting expectation from the first call. Grace mentioned that earlier. Families understanding their responsibilities, giving them the opportunity to pick their own providers, meaning support coordinator, if possible. But just having those conversations as to, this is how we do what we do, so that they know what those boundaries are. And I mentioned that because we do have some clients that call repeatedly. And so like those kind of clients that I have identified, when I move them to a support coordinator because maybe now they don't want their current support coordinator anymore, I would make those, like written things and conversation, I would say to the client and this caregiver that, if you have crisis, by no means reach out to your support coordinator. But if you just want to chat, like this is not emergency, this is just me wanting to talk, you can call the support coordinator supervisor, because what often happens is the support coordinator gets so burnt out from repeated calls that they now say, I don't know if I can keep this case. But here's the honest truth with DDD, and very much so as an agency under DDD, I do tell my support coordinators, we do not cherry pick. What that means is you cannot just want to pick all the easy cases, right? Of course, you can express when you are overwhelmed, and we can have meetings to see how we can dampen the stress and make suggestions on what to do, how the client can better manage things, and how the support coordinators can use all kinds of stress modalities to make the relationship work. But definitely setting expectation. It says align a routine call, like someone that calls frequently, we might say to the person, can we make a Tuesday call? You'll check in with me, or I'll check in with you on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. We'll designate the person of contact. You can call your support coordinators at this time. However, Tosin, you can call at this time. And then when it comes to signing the signatures for the plans, to kind of have some kind of how we do what, so that the family understands what to expect when it comes to processing all the documents. Again, there's one thing I put in there, understanding how diagnosis play a role in the client-provider relationship. That is very key, because sometimes our clients have dual diagnosis, and sometimes their support, that be the provider or the support coordinator, may be responding to the client when they're in acute phase of their diagnosis. Case in point, maybe they have a bipolar or schizophrenia, and now the client cooks up a story that doesn't exist, and now the support coordinator is reacting to that. I think having a good understanding of how those diagnoses plays a role, and as a support coordinator supervisor, that's actually my role, to kind of bridge that gap. Oftentimes when I have support coordinator that struggle with that, or the family not understanding that the support coordinator has a stressor in their life, which made it impossible for them to be more consistent. So, oh, my support coordinator is not responding to me as usual. Well, maybe they have something going on. I am able to bridge that gap as a supervisor of the agency. Understanding the role of stress. I did mention that we all have stressors, and understanding what that looks like for everyone. For some people, avoidance, they would avoid you, or whatever the client or the support coordinator, they start not picking up calls. Some people will use just overly little things are blown out of proportion. Understanding what stress looks like in your staff and the family is a big part of managing conflict. Then available tools and resources for all team members, just pointing them in the direction of support, whether it be your staff who is overwhelmed, making those available resources to them, or even the individuals understanding that their mental health is beginning to decline, and knowing whether it's time to call CARES. CARES is an organization that exists to help in those times where you have concerns for your client. So pretty much managing conflict for us as an agency is really looking at a whole system. It's a whole dynamic process to step back. And I think DDD has done well I know there's something whereby you need to have like a human resource people that are in your organization, that when you have like a case that is posing a challenge, you will call them and you will discuss the case, not the intricate of the case. You don't have to share personal information, but you will state a scenario, and then those people in your agency will be able to give you a feedback on how to manage it. DDD also has that resource also in case as an agency, you don't have those people put in place already, so that you can actually have a whole view and not just be making a subjective response to conflict. Grace, if you want to just add to that.
I think you said it the best. You don't need to add anything else. And just FYI on the notes section, I do realize that the DDD eligibility step 2 website has been put there, but please remember that step 1 must be completed before step 2. So I've added the link to apply the Medicaid eligibility first before you apply for the DDD eligibility, should in case you need that. You can go ahead.
All right, balancing practice and family. All right, I think this is one thing that, like, a lot of times when I have my my support coordinators, when people sign up and they're like, oh, I want to do support coordination, I always say, don't let support coordination take over you. Because I remember when we came along 6 years ago, it was in everything and anything in our lives. My support coordinators, we were doing the whole practice, like the whole support coordination, almost like round the clock. They would call me anytime, everywhere. And one of the things we've been able to do over the years is to understand that, just having, when do you do, like having a time where you are keyed into addressing the needs of your clients. I see this because it's such a remote opportunity to work opportunity. People don't always know that even though they are mentally keyed in, they have to physically pin those times out. For example, I would say to my support coordinator that I see that is struggling to identify when they are available for their clients, I would say, show me what a work week looks like for you. Like, where does DDD fit into the picture of things for you? And that's for someone that is struggling. For the most part, most people are most support coordinators, either they've had experience or they come from a different practice, or like other disciplines that they already understand time management. But for someone struggling, I would want to say to them, show me what DDD looks like on your weekly schedule. Where do you have time to meet the needs of the clients? So that's why I put time management. Personally, for me, I also have the times plugged in on my schedule when I do. I support my clients. I'm available to them. It's just that this is the designated time that I'm logged in for work. And setting boundaries, very important. When it comes to work life, knowing, sometimes we employ folks that are very familiar, and sometimes familiarity gets in the way, or just even with families. I know of a situation where one of my support coordinators got really familiar with the family, and they were going out to dinner. Nothing wrong with that, as long as you understand the boundaries. So that's a very key thing, that even though the practice becomes something that it's a long-term relationship and you become a member of that family somehow, that you still understand that there's work to be done, and we still have to follow policies and procedures by Medicaid. So, Grace, do you have something to say?
Yeah, I'm just going to reiterate one thing. Set expectation from the beginning, because yes, if you leave it, if you just leave it out plain, I mean, if you're working remotely, you can have tendencies not to prioritize and really have time management for your schedule. But like I say, if you have a support coordinator that calls you and they did not set an expectation for what days, what time would you like us to meet on a monthly basis, you as the member of the family or as the guardian, I would definitely suggest you put that in place. Okay, can we meet every month on a Monday for 2 hours just to discuss, do follow up, whatever it is, so that time is always slotted for that time. So I would definitely suggest you keep that in mind and just have meet from your first call. Do that. That way there's no back and forth with, trying to set your schedule and getting what you need to get done for your child.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's a lot that I'm going to stop share for a minute. A lot that we've unpacked this afternoon. And so you guys did a fantastic job of giving a great overview about support coordination services. And I guess from the family perspective, one of the things that I was happy to hear you say is that you're available 24/7. And so while it may be plugged in at a particular time to do the administrative work, it sounds like that's what you're referring to when you're talking about time carved out for administrative versus time families can connect. Because from the family side, we want to know that if I'm having a challenge or want to know how to navigate, my support coordinator, I can email them, I can, depending on, I can text them or I can call them. And then within a time frame of expectation, they can get back to me within a time frame. And what I hear you saying is that if you ran into a support coordinator who's not being responsive and minding that they might also have other clients you're supporting, then the next escalation point is to go to the supervisor. So then the supervisor is also there as part of the team.
Yes.
Which is what most of us do when our kids are in school anyway. We email the case manager for our, child study team and communicate a particular need. We email the teacher, we communicate. So here, the support coordinator is the one that's basically being a quarterback. And I think that's the word I want to use for families, that support coordinator is your quarterback to access all the different tools and whistles and bells that are there. The importance here is, which we said, is the person should be able to have the empathetic, knowledgeable. I think that's important because oftentimes we've dealt with people who are very robotic. I've dealt with this is in the perform care setting where I didn't really have choices. I don't have a choice to change the person who was very robotic and actually even had me just like almost in tears because I was just like, I'm frustrated. This monthly calls you're talking about, he calls me and he asks me the same silly questions every single time, assuming, and he's like, well, I have to go through those same questions. Yeah, nothing has changed from month to month, but without really being empathetic and saying, let's talk about this individual, how can we best support them? So what I want my families listening to us here is know the system as well as the support coordinator does. These ladies will tell you, this is the reason why I said, okay, my goal will become a support coordination agency. Why? Because I know personally, I need to understand the in and outs, what's available, what's not. And then together we learn it together because ultimately support coordinators can come and go.
Yeah.
But you, the legal guardian, you have the responsibility. I'm a legal guardian, so I have the responsibility for this individual for life. So it's important that I understand the system in which I'm in, and so that's really what I wanted to kind of add to the conversation. One thing that you guys said, which is it's not about the money, but it's about the families. Can you tell us what is the one thing that makes you continue to do this work? I mean, like, what is it about that makes you continue to be in this space?
You want me
Go for it.
Okay. For me, actually, is the joy that I see when I see a parent You know, like I've said before, even owning an agency, I've worked with individuals with disability. And when you see that the parent come into the house, maybe a staff was working during like a direct care and it's not clean or the food is not there. Previously, as a manager of a home, I see the face of the parent when they see that the kid is actually happy and is, engaged with other peer. The environment itself, it's clean, smells good. I mean, it just gives a joy to say, okay, I am safe. I'm okay. My child will be fine. So for me, I think that just gives me pleasure to be able to see that on their face. For me, I think that's the most important thing. Rather than anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I say welcome to Support Coordination 101 was very early on when I started. There was this young man who was 31 years old and he had lived home with his parents who eventually passed. And then his brother was caring for him, but then he had his own family to care for. And the day he eventually got that apartment, that was the first housing that we processed. He took a picture and was so delighted. I actually didn't see the bid. He's 31, he's entitled, but it was such a joy. And I had moments when the brother who lives away from him actually will just randomly call me and say, thank you, Ms. Tosin, for what you do for us. And I'm like, wow, this is big. I think that really stayed with me.
That's awesome. You talked about PCPT. You used the word PCPT earlier, Grace. Can you just kind of expound on what the importance of that document? Because I think we mentioned NJCAP, we mentioned the ISP, but we didn't talk about that. But that's a core component that people need to have. Can you speak on that?
The PCPT is really, really a tool that highlights the wants of this individual. So you're not just going based on, okay, this is the medical, issue that this person has, or this is their state of mind at this point. No, it actually digs into who this person is, the person that is around them, what they love to do. If they're educated, actually highlights, yes, I had a bachelor's or I had a master's. It's really detailed about that person in itself. So not much of the paperwork is, I am Grace, I love to sew, I love to swim, I have 3 kids, I have a husband, or if I'm single, I would like to have a boyfriend one day, I'd like to have a child. Like, it really, really details to just let me know what you want. Who are you, so that I can best work out a plan for you. So yeah, that's what the PCPT tool does.
So for a new family that gets assigned a support coordinator, I think the bulk of that work should be developing that document, because that document is basically giving an insight to anybody that will work with a loved one, that this is who they are, this is their hopes and dreams, this is their desires they want. And that's a living document that goes from place to place. I shared a story that I developed that PCPT about 4 years ago. I came across it in a training, right? And when Nicholas was going to camp, we took that spreadsheet, that tool, and created it and gave it to the camp overnight for some of my families here know that I sent him to a 1-week camp, and I was just like, my heart was in my stomach, because I ended up staying like maybe 20 minutes away from the campground for the first 24 hours. But we provided that tool out of that tool. And to be honest with you, we've now used that tool everywhere else that we go. So if you want to Google that, it's called the Person-Centered Planning Tool, PCPT. For families listening, it's really important, because what it does is they give a snapshot for the support coordinator to essentially be able to do their work efficiently. So that's going to be part of that piece that we wanted to share here. Any last minute words? I know we're way over our time. I had it in my head that we can do this an hour, but clearly so much to know. Any last minute, words that you want to say to families listening? And then obviously I want to open it up to anybody that has questions. No question is silly. Absolutely none. I hope this was helpful to folks who are listening in, and I was so happy to see some old friends join us online. And there was a question that people want to watch this later. Yes, definitely. But I want to thank Grace and Tosin again for really making time this afternoon to really highlight the importance of what support coordination agency is. You said, would you mind posting in the chat? Yeah, go ahead and post your question in the chat. I'll read it out loud for you. Somebody's asking that question. It's your time, your commitment to our families, really, really, really appreciate it in so many ways. And I want to highlight that if you're in the transition stage right now, your child is between 14 and 18, do your very best to start to think about what you want the life to look like. And do your very best to start to learn these things that has been shared here today. The first thing that we highlighted is they turn 18, determine the level of independency your loved one can achieve. Meaning that if they might need you to be a legal guardian, you need to file for that. Because without that, life is completely impossible. That's the first point I want to raise. Some individuals may not need complete guardianship. It may be a supported decision-making part that they would have. So that's the first thing. So 18, guardianship, if you need to do that. Number 2, SSI, they get Medicaid. Number 3, apply for DDD. DDD services doesn't start to 21. And then the rest of it is for the rest of their lives. If you're going to do these things in that order, it will be very helpful. Start at the age of 16 at that latest. Don't wait till they're 19 because it takes time to put the paperwork together. So I wanted to just make sure that people are really able to kind of understand it from that perspective. So I wanted to make sure DDD is for 18 plus. So once again, if you're as old as I am, when you join the DDD circle, DDD used to be from the age of 0 to 21 plus. Then, and remember, DDD is Division of Developmental Disability, which is under Department of Health and Human Services, DHS. DDD is only for 21 and older. DCF is for 0 to 21, 20.9 and 11. This Department of Children and Family Services for supports. And there's a Department of Education for education. So 0 to 21, you're dealing with 2 departments, Department of Children and Family Services and Department of Education. 21 and older, you're dealing with Department of Health and Human Services, which is DDD. DDD is under a division under DD. See, I had to go learn these things so that I can make sure I know what the heck I'm talking about. And I know there are folks that are watching me. So that's what it is. So if you're a parent out there that you have a diagnosis, get plugged into the system now. Don't wait till they're 21. In other words, if you're eligible for Perform Care, get it now because you don't know when you're going to need a service. It's like insurance. You don't know when you're going to need it. When Nicholas was 16, that's when I needed mobile crisis because he was having a lot of health issues, elopement. I called mobile crisis and they helped me to navigate through the system. And that was because I was already plugged in. I wasn't looking for support just to get support. I needed to make sure it's there. So don't be ashamed to ask for support because that's what we all are in life. We all need a lifeline. And the lifeline is going to be there as a tool for you. So all of us are in this boat together, and these are professionals. So some of you, if you know these ladies, do ask them. They have lots of experiences. They like to be shy about it. Clearly, see how intelligent they are. And if you're listening to me and you have any question about any stage of your child's development, they may be 5, they may be 3, we will connect you to other people who are providing those supports so that ultimately we want your child to have the best life. We don't want them to be dependent on supports, but we want them to have support when they need it. And so I hope that summarizes it for everybody. Any parting words, ladies?
I'd like to say thank you again for the opportunity. I'm definitely glad to help. I believe my number is also on this
What
slide.
counties do you serve? What counties do you serve?
Currently I serve 6 of them, Bergen, Excess, Monmouth, Middlesex, Passaic, and one more Hudson County. Yeah.
All right, so you are, what's your agency's name?
Care Support Services.
Care Support Services. Yeah. So, see, Tosin mentioned hers. And Tosin, all you have to do is you pull in Google support coordination and her agency comes right on the top. I knew. She has an SEO on that. Search engine
I went for
optimization.
the good neighbor. It's a good,
Uh-huh.
I said it's the good neighbor.
Yeah, it's Good Neighbor. It comes up. It does. Comes up immediately. I was clearly online last night looking at support coordination agencies. So I want to just throw it out to families. You're not under any obligation to necessarily have to use these two ladies. If you feel the need to, there are another option for you, but there's a number of our agencies out there. If you go online and Google support coordination agencies, they're out there. We just want to make sure that we bring you information that is pertinent and that you may not have anybody to ask of. But you can always reach out to us as well. And my goal is here to support you. So I want to say thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. It certainly will be bringing you back on because families always have questions on the different ways. Tosin understands what I mean. Grace, don't worry, I'll be creative, find ways to bring you back on that end. So I want to say thank you, everyone. If you're watching us, we really appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for your questions, and no question is silly. And as we round up, we're going to be sending out a link for a survey that we're doing from My Goal. We want to know how we can better come alongside you and support you. So we do this as the expert series on the second Sunday of the month. We also have a social hour the second Thursday of the month. And then we also have empowerment moment the fourth Thursday of the month. And then we do some community outings. And now people are beginning to ask us for live meetings. So we want to hear from you. If you're interested in answering our questions, we'll really appreciate it on how we can better support you. What kind of education sessions do you want to hear about? What tools? I just come up with the topics, just based on what my personal needs are and what I'm hearing people say. But I would love to hear, what do you want to learn more about and how we can better support you? So we put the link in here to better help us to prepare for next year. So on that note, thank you everybody for joining us. I hope you have a great Thanksgiving. And next week we have a social event, Special Needs Fall Festival by Rutgers. It's on Rutgers campus. It's from 1 to 4. It's free. If you want to come out, we in Piscataway, we'd love to see you there. So on that note, thank you everyone and have a great evening. Bye-bye now.
Thank you very much.